The American Constitutional Republic. Affairs of State in Oklahoma. The beliefs, principles, opinions, and views of people just like me. This is 3D Politics. Featuring your host, the Verbal Viking, every Monday night right here on Facebook Live. Catch me also at verbalviking.com. And if you want to send me a message, verbalviking@gmail.com. Tonight, we've got an exciting episode, a gal that is hard to catch. She is on the run doing a lot of stuff. And I got to tell you, I just barely caught up with her. Tonight, we have Natalie Bruno. Before we bring her in, I want to say last week, thank you to Chip Paul from True MedX, the Endo Wizard, who won that fantastic award, Best Tincture, from Herbage Magazine. Chip Paul, of course, the Endo Wizard with New Pharma and True MedX. Thanks to him for being a great ambassador from Oklahoma to the rest of the world. Tonight, a gal who is a CASA volunteer in Carter, or has been a CASA volunteer in Carter County. She is an associate board member with the Oklahoma Lawyers for Children. She was awarded for service to children with the Judge Nan Patton Award. Coaches youth basketball at the Y, kids coach at Edmond Soccer Club. State gubernatorial election day is coming up November 8th, 2022. Let's see if we can, first we'll see if we can reach her by radio contact. Do we have you there?
I'm here.
There she is. We're going to try to beam her in. Let's see if it works. See if I can make it. Look at the, and there she is. Nice job. That's what you call production value. Not much, but that's what it is. Natalie Bruno, thank you for being here. And of course, thanks for running your campaign. We are lucky here in America to be able to have everyday, ordinary people who are citizens get in the ring and discuss politics. So I think I got your stuff. I really do want to dig in as we get going to the McGirt decision. I want you to kind of teach me what you know about that. I'm filled with opinion, but don't have, I don't know. And so, Natalie Bruno, first of all, we're going to take an hour to expose Natalie Bruno. This is the first time you and I have ever met. And but we're getting a chance to meet right now. So first of all, just from like person to person, why did you like politics, and when did it happen, regardless of party, but when did you start watching the news, and saying, man, how old were you?
Oh gosh. I was fairly young. My father has always been pretty political. He was in the military. Obviously, he wasn't able to be outwardly vocal, but in our household, it was always a pretty strong discussion. So I was raised in a family where discussing politics was encouraged. I wish that more families were that way. So many times, you're told to not discuss politics or religion in conversation, but I think that's one of the reasons why we're unable to speak politics in a, comfortable, even toned manner now, because we do it so infrequently, right? Unless we're on Facebook.
Well, yeah.
So,
my line about that, if you can't talk about politics and religion, what else is there? Besides weather, Mm-hmm. So, but go ahead. So I can see now you grew up in a family that was already discussing these pertinent topics, and so, but then when did it catch with you?
So I would probably say when I was a young adult, I started really kind of noticing how broken things were. Super high level. I always make the joke that I've literally been registered as everything because I had a really hard time kind of figuring out where I fit in politically, right? So I was one of those that we call politically homeless until I reached my final destination of a Libertarian. But I started noticing that things were very broken, probably in my early 20s. And then, the older I became, the more aware I was, and the more experiences that, I had in my personal life that enabled me to realize even more so how broken things were. until it got to the point where, because of my nonprofit work, other philanthropy that I do, and just a lot of things that you read and see on a day-to-day basis, I realized that we are not going to get change if we continue to vote for the same kinds of people. And I can complain all I want about having bad candidates or not having the correct kind of candidates, but I'm one of those fond believers that if you see that something is broken, sometimes you need to be that person that steps up and fixes it.
It's a military. This is a military trait. You're following your family's footsteps. It's like, if you can see the problem clearly, you're the person to fix it. So this is impressive. Okay, so I don't want to interrupt your flow, but we go. So go ahead. So I want to get into the healthcare system is broken. And so I can see now, right before we get to the healthcare, how did you move to the Libertarian Party as your home?
So the last political party that I was affiliated with was the Republican Party. As I mentioned, I started off as an independent when I was 18, and I registered for the first time because I didn't want to be a part of anything. And then after I realized that, I'm like, I can't vote in primaries. I can't. You're pretty limited. I was like, well, maybe I'm a Democrat because I am very socially aware. Criminal justice reform is important to me. Right. So I jumped into that boat, realized I was definitely in the wrong boat because I am absolutely not for the high taxes and, all of the government ran social, services and stuff like that. So then I moved over to the Republican Party. And was there for a few years until I realized also that it just didn't feel right to me. And then
okay, hold on, I got to jump in. Republican Party circa what year?
So it was up until 2018.
Oh, all the way to 2018. Okay.
Yeah, I've only been a Libertarian for 2 years.
I was mad when Bush Sr. said no new taxes. That's how old I am, kid. All right, but I haven't learned my lesson. So anyway, so there you go, Libertarian, and the Republic. So 20. What drove you away? Are you an anti-Trumper, or what do you feel about that?
I actually voted for Trump the first election. I was not an anti-Trumper the first election, but I came to a point in time where I realized that both parties have drifted very far away from their base. And I really don't feel like they're putting forth candidates that represent their parties anymore, but nobody's doing anything to change it. And we really need more options than the two anyways. And I had a good friend of mine who has been a Libertarian for a very long time that kept telling me, because I would obviously air these frustrations on social media and in person. And they said, Natalie, you should really look into the Libertarian Party because everything that you're saying aligns with that. And I did what a lot of people do when they say Libertarian. What? No, I'm not a liberal. And, because I was very naive to what that was. But I did some digging and found out that, I pretty much align with 99% of what the Libertarian Party stands for, which is, individual freedom, minimizing government, and kind of separating out the government from as many personal issues as possible, and that resonated with me. And so that's when I decided to make the change. So it really wasn't necessarily a candidate or anything
right
serious. It was just a collection of things over time.
Okay, that's an excellent answer. My new most recent favorite Libertarian is Will Dougherty. I'm sure you know him. This guy is as charming as they come.
He's my communications director.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. This guy, oh my gosh, he's just fascinating and just infectious with energy. He just he lights up the whole thing, and so. I talked with him about the concept that essentially libertarianism, the way I see it, is it's the Bill of Rights without the Declaration. He went into, nature can be creator, it doesn't have to be God, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to press you on this thing here. And I'm going to ask you the question, but I want to, so it doesn't sound like a setup, I'm going to tell you first.
Oh, here we go.
Well, I thought, I'm not just going to throw this out there because it'll sound like a gotcha. I personally believe that, because you said, you used the label, I forget, because people say, libertarian, I know you're liberal. Okay, so a classic liberal, you probably know, is a good thing. It's what brought us liberal freedoms.
Right.
And so that's great. And everything twists like this as we go through history, and it all gets twisted around. So my problem is not with left or right, liberal or conservative. My dirty word is progressive. How do you consider, so my question is, do you consider yourself a progressive? But I'm letting it be known with full transparency that is that literally the lowest form of life in a political form. How do you feel about the label progressive?
So I personally don't have a emotional tie to the word progressive. I will say that I am not a progressive, and anybody that is a progressive would probably say there's no way she's not a progressive. So I will say that.
Now, why do you say that? Because if the persona of you is one of a progressive, but you don't view yourself as one, is perception reality, or how does it work?
So I think it's one of those things where, of course, if you are, the best way I can kind of explain it is people who are fairly conservative or very right, they look at me and they think, oh, she is way too far that way, and vice versa the other way around, right? We kind of get ping-ponged around based off of our ideologies. So I don't feel like any of my ideas are really progressive. I'm not saying that I agree with certain life standards or agree with certain social issues on a personal level, but I am understanding enough to know that the government should have nothing to do with those decisions or those things. So I think,
okay.
You know what I mean? So that's why I say the progressives will even say I'm not progressive, is because I am not saying we need to make laws that protect these certain things and allow these certain things and do these certain things. I'm just saying that you should be able to do what you want, because the government shouldn't even be involved in that at all. That shouldn't even be. So,
okay. So again, half the show is me here, Natalie. So hang in there. But what is your so progressive? Well, I hate the term. To me, how do you define progressive?
I think that depends on who you ask. So, I'm not a lifelong politician, as you've mentioned earlier, right? And so whenever I think of a progressive person, I think of, people who are, very much so pushing certain aspects of social issues. So, whether or not we use gender on birth certificates and, pronoun usage and ACAB and all these kinds of terms and stuff that are very, very social driven. Okay, so that's kind of when I think of a progressive. I think really pushing the boundaries on social issues. For me, but I've heard other people use completely different definitions. So I think it just kind of changes based off of who you are and what your political affiliation is.
All right, let me see if I can persuade you real quickly. In a second, we'll hear the intercom whistle, and I'll retell everybody what we're doing tonight. But a progressive, to me, the progressive ideology, and this is why I think it's universally bad, whether it's on the left or the right. Let's say that the right is represented by the religious right, and for the sake of this discussion, and then the left is the the socially, anything goes routine. And so the progressive is bad on either side of that. You're listening to the amazing analysis of Tommy McKay, the host of 3D Politics, blessed tonight with Natalie Bruno, taking time out of her schedule, running for gubernatorial candidate in the Libertarian, on the Libertarian ticket, November 8th. 2022. So we are learning all about the Libertarian candidate tonight here on Facebook Live with 3D Politics and your Verbal Viking. So the progressive is like a caustic acid. I call them liars by definition, because you and I could make an agreement shake hands and say, okay, that's the deal. But a progressive it's always the first step. Regardless of what the last thing we agreed on, oh, no, we're going to sharpen the stick one more step. And whether you're sharpening it one more step for God or one more step for the LGBTs, it's just like caustic. It continues to eat and erode and shred the community fabric. Is a progressive because they lie. It's the first step. It's never a deal done. And that's the problem with the progressive. Have I convinced you yet?
No, I can agree with that.
Okay, we're winning so far. Okay, our healthcare system is busted. We're a quarter of the way through. So we're going to move quickly because I know there's some areas I want to press you on. But the healthcare system is broken. I would suggest the healthcare system is broken because we've made insurance compulsory instead of just basic, responsibilities of ownership and private property mandatory. What do you think? Why is it that paying for damage to another person's car isn't compulsory, but having the insurance papers? We've made insurance compulsory, not government law. What do you think about that one?
So I agree that insurance has kind of destroyed things. I have lived through some very unique things. So I'm a breast cancer survivor.
Congratulations.
So I have had between giving birth to children, having cancer, and then obviously the healthcare that goes along with raising children. I've been given lots of different, I've been able to see things through different lenses, right? And been able to pick on where different things are broken. And, the thing with insurance is I think that if we could remove honestly, the insurance altogether and go to more of a free market, that would be the best case scenario. The perfect example that I give, that I actually kind of steal from Jo Jorgensen, is she brings up, LASIK eye surgery. Okay, LASIK eye surgery is a perfect example. You can go on pretty much any LASIK website and know exactly how much they're going to charge. You can, nowadays, you can go and get LASIK eye surgery, good quality eye surgery, when I get one free for $600 and have eye surgery and not have to have glasses anymore, right? And you know exactly what you're going to pay going into it. You can make payment plans, whatever you need to do. I have health insurance through my employer, and I just had a root canal. So not even the laser eye surgery. I had a root canal with a couple of other things for my teeth. And after insurance, I paid close to $900. Like, how are we at a point that after insurance, I'm having to pay almost $900 for a root canal and some fillings versus somebody can go to a LASIK eye surgery and have laser surgery on your eyes and spend less money, right? And it's, just like with anything else, if you have insurance, it's going to pay for something. They're going to jack up the prices because they know that the insurance is going to pay for it. Another example I use is my daughter has ADHD, and so she gets prescribed Adderall. There was a couple month window where we did not have healthcare coverage whenever I had transitioned jobs that I had to pay out of pocket. But I was actually able to pay less money out of pocket by about $5 than my copay, because my copay is about $53 and so cents. But whenever I didn't have insurance, I could use a coupon that the manufacturer provided, and it only cost me like $48 or $47 after the coupon. And so I'm like, how bad is it that, that's just, how much the insurance has broken everything. And are we able, or am I able to say that if I get elected, we're going to get straight to that? No, because we know that something that's that broken, we can't just jump in and say we're pulling the rug and
you can't back out immediately. Yeah. You'll have withdrawals.
And I'm still working on logically. What could we do in small steps to kind of unravel that whole?
Well, okay, Natalie, there's your problem. You said logically. I mean, what do you mean logic? Because this is one of the problems. You apply logic. Why would it cost less to have tooth work on and or more to have a tooth worked on than it is to have your eye worked on? But I mean, this is applying logic. Now the pricing scale between milk and a gallon of gas is a little bit closer now. But I made the point earlier, a year or so ago, Why is it that a gallon of milk costs $5 and it falls from a cow? You got to catch it, but you got to drill and process oil and petroleum to get a gallon of gas, and it's $1.89. And the reason is not insurance. The reason is government intrusion. I mean, it has to do with government having their finger. Milk is it's like a drug. It's a controlled substance. Ever since FDR, milk has been controlled. And they control, if you're in the milk business, they not only control how much you get to spend making it, they control how much you get to make from it. It's called a make allowance. So the government totally controls milk. That's why it just stays at $5 a gallon. But the problem here I see with the idea of the money is that the money is a fiat currency. I don't know if you're familiar with KRMG has Matt Moore on. He's a Bitcoin expert, etc. And he talks about the fiat currency. So, I mean, even if you can tie these insurance rates down to a dollar value, even that it's a ridiculous fluctuating inflation game with the government. Are you familiar with Harry Brown from 2000? He was the guy doing Liberty. I'm so old. I know who Harry Brown is, okay?
I know who Harry Brown is.
Harry Brown, 2000, circa 2000. Minimum amount of government in all situations, all times. That's what hooked me on libertarianism. Also, I was able to argue with my 3 sisters who are pro-abortion because they're feminists, and I was able to bring them a great libertarian argument that was against abortion without a religious angle. It had to do with owning your own body. But I see that the Libertarian Party is betraying the ownership of the fetal body for the fetus to own its body is one of the things we need to talk about in healthcare. And so this is one of the problems I have with libertarianism is I was hooked in 2000 and they've betrayed the concept of private property ownership, my body. Okay, because somehow women, now American women, are the most powerful beings on the face of the earth, not oppressed. There is no wage gap. Okay, women are not oppressed, especially in America. You?
I don't agree with that at all, actually.
Imagine that.
Well, I will say, from a realist standpoint, has it gotten substantially better? Absolutely. There is still a small wage gap. I don't feel like I personally can count myself as one of those people because I am a businesswoman and I've always negotiated my salaries and done so in a smart way. But I do know that statistically it still does exist. I will also say, though, that there are still some things. Yes, women are very powerful. And there are a lot of women that have very loud, strong voices, but there are still quite a few things that we as women, have issues with that are unique. Or I want to say unique to us. Let me change that word. That we deal with a lot more frequently, like sexual harassment and stuff is still a very large, very huge issue in the workforce and then out and about, even since I've been a candidate, which has only officially been for, 5-6 months now I run into it. Okay, so there are still issues that we run into.
Okay, so this is one of these, it's like become a colloquial buzzword like racism, name calling, misogyny, sexual harassment. I mean, please, if the women are equal, then there is no such thing as sexual harassment.
Right. So that means we're not equal if there is still sexual harassment.
So then if you're not equal, then 40 years of feminist ideology that was shoved down my throat by the ladies was wrong. You're not equal then, right?
Are you saying that we're not seen as equul yet? Or
well, I don't want to personalize it. I say, I'm picking a fight with my sisters and they're not even here. So when I say you, what I mean is, let me pick at you a little bit on this statistical anomaly of the wage gap. You say not you. You're familiar with Obama's composite girlfriend?
I'm not.
Okay, Obama had a girlfriend that was reported in a book that he had, and what they said was, well, this girlfriend was a statistical composite of what a girlfriend would have been. In fact, what my contention is that we already have laws that protect women against wage discrimination and sexual harassment. In fact, I know of a gal personally who runs the equity adjustments across a company that is nationwide, global, and it's like 25,000 or so employees, and every equity adjustment they made last year was in favor of males because males have been getting gypped on the side of salaries. So the idea of a wage gap, and I don't think you can. So first of all, two people are never equal at a job. There's no such thing as two people who are equally qualified for a job. So how can anyone be discriminated upon one basis of gender?
Well, I don't know if you're asking that rhetorically or not.
No, I'm ranting now, and I appreciate you listening. I'm ranting in front of you so you can correct me to whatever degree I'm able to accept it.
So that's fair. So I will say that I obviously can only base information based off of, case studies and statistics that I have seen. I am not an expert in that area, so I'm not going to say I've looked over X amount of case studies and seen, whatever. And you are correct that there are going to be multiple positions where people have different qualifications that would qualify them for different wages, so on and so forth. Typically what they look at, though, from what I understand, is equal positions with equal amount of experience. Obviously, you're never going to have two people that are exact, but if one person is able to come in at a higher wage than the other, even though they had somewhat the same, that's kind of what they're speaking to. Now, I, again, am not an expert. I'm just regurgitating what I have heard. But I will say, though, that, based off, the only thing that I can speak to are things that I personally have encountered.
I understand.
And that is where I say that, no, there is absolutely still sexual harassment. And even though I myself am a very strong woman and I see myself as an equal to anybody, but that does not necessarily mean that men see themselves as equals to women.
How do you define sexual harassment?
Oh gosh, let's see. Somebody grabbing you inappropriately is sexual.
Okay, that's assault. That's not sexual. That's assault.
It's assault can be a form of sexual harassment. They can be under, each other. Okay.
Okay. I mean, it's wrong either way. You don't get to grab people. That's not right.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, grabbing inappropriately, making sexual remarks. Anything like that, I would definitely deem as sexual harassment. I mean,
and so this can happen, though, especially with the freedom of the LGBTQs and the plus mark, which opens it up to literally anything. Right. That's not only women. I've had sexual stuff said to me. Look at this. Even I have been said. Even they've said to me, woo-hoo, you know. I mean, I've had crude stuff said to me. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, do we need so you're a small government person who wants government interference to make sure people don't harass each other?
No, I never said that.
I didn't. I'm asking. I'm asking.
No, I never said that at all. You just made the comment that.
Yeah, that's me. It's all me.
And that, women aren't, experiencing the same issues. And I was just pointing out, no, there are still issues. I didn't say that the government should be involved.
Okay. All right. You've put up with me on that one for long enough. Let's talk about the tribes and teach me, because I don't like everything Stitt's done. He overreached it on the COVID thing because he's trying to thank God for Frank Urbanik in Oklahoma City pushing back against Stitt. I mean, wow. What riot, like that kind of thing. But so teach me what you know about the tribes, both the state and this is from your website. I'm getting the opportunity to interview Natalie Bruno right here on 3D Politics. She's put up with me so far for a long, long time, and I'm just horrible. But we're going to get into the tribes here. We're coming up to the break, so on the other side here, we're going to talk about your statement from your website You say both the state and federal government need to cease undermining tribal sovereignty. The federal government needs to honor the promises it made through treaties that the tribes would not have their right to self-govern taken away. The Supreme Court's McGirt decision reaffirms the United States treaties, and the state of Oklahoma has been acting outside of its jurisdiction for 100 years. We're going to talk about that, and you can teach me and see if I'll settle down after this. So hang in there. We'll be back after the break.
It's Thursday night, and you're grabbing drinks with some friends. Started off with a pitcher for the table, which quickly becomes two. And another. 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 Could be the most expensive night of your life.
The American Constitutional Republic. Affairs of state in Oklahoma. The beliefs, principles, opinions of views of people, mostly just me. Tommy McKay, the verbal Viking, blessed with Natalie Bruno tonight. Let's see if we can beam her back into the show here. Here she comes, here she comes. All right, Natalie's back, and thank God she came back. Otherwise, I'd be here wondering, well, I guess I don't know what I did. And then later I'd see the show like, well, that's what you did, Tom. All right, so you've been very kind to put up with my rant, but that's part of what is the show, is I get all upset about it, and then you teach me. So both the state and federal governments have been infringing on the tribes. I am a member of the Cherokee Nation. I grew up with my family teaching me about how the American government has robbed us every step of the way. And yet, one of the deals I have to think about is that individual ownership is better than tribal sovereignty. The American system is better than tribal alliance. But that's not even what we're talking about. Teach me about the McGirt decision and how you would deal with it differently as governor.
So I want to say first, I am not a tribal member. I have worked alongside the tribes for probably about 7 years. As an employee for some of their facilities. But I am not a tribal member, so I do not have any, I don't get any benefit from having an opinion one way or the other.
Right.
So that being said, I have just gone off of reading and learning from friends of mine that are tribal members or from people who are very much so involved in this issue in the community. So high level, obviously, the McGirt situation was, I don't know if you want me to go into.
I want you to teach me. I'm filled with opinion. I'm filled with opinion and zero fact. So I don't know about the McGirt. I know what I think about the McGirt decision and what I've read, but I believe you probably are better educated on it than I.
Okay. So essentially the situation was McGirt, who had done some very heinous crimes, had a very, very good attorney. I do have to give him that. That basically said, hey, you tried him in state court. That was illegal. This happened within, he was a tribal member. It happened on tribal land. So it should have been either tribal court or federal court. And they said, no, it was not on tribal land. And he brought up the fact that no, this area is actually considered a reservation. It was bestowed to the tribes that way. And the state does not have the right to dissolve a reservation. It has to be done through the Supreme Court or through the federal government. And so they obviously took it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court was like, actually, yes, that is true. You do not have the authority to dissolve a reservation. That does have to be done by us. And we never did that. So, essentially that region, even though obviously through colonialization, sorry, it's a late day.
No, everybody's working through this. Yes.
Essentially, we had gone through a point where we had, instead of them having the property being communal property, which is how they had done it through their ancestors,
right,
they decided to say, no, each of you have to give the land up to each of your individual tribal members, because they were trying to teach them to be like us. And, we all
individual
have plots of land and whatever. And so obviously over time, people sold off their plots of land to businesses or to non-tribal members. And so a lot of that land is actually not technically owned by the tribe anymore. But they still deemed that, yes, even though the individual plots have been sold to other individuals, the region itself is still seen as a reservation.
Within the reservation, right. Okay.
And so that being said, they said, yes, he is right. It should have gone to tribal court or the federal court. Okay. So obviously the state got really ticked off by that, because it mostly opened up a bunch of questions. So individuals were, upset. Well, that means he gets to go free. No, that just means he goes back to tribal court, and it was a pretty bad crime. He's going to still get sentenced,
okay.
Whatever. But what it did was it brought up all these questions. Okay. So, well, now that you said this, what does this mean? What about these retroactive cases? What does it mean for, oil rights and stuff in those areas? Like, it brought up all these different things that we now don't know the answers to, right?
Jurisdictional authority. We questioned a bunch of areas of jurisdictional authority.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so that being said, so instead, I think for me personally, it's been more of the issue of how it's been handled. Okay. A lot of the finger pointing has gone towards the tribes, when in all actuality, it's our fault as a state, because we're the ones that overstepped and didn't do things the correct way. Okay. And that's just the way it is. Just because we didn't get caught doing it or nobody said anything over the course of time.
We just now,
Yeah, we just now got caught. We just now got our hand in the cookie jar is essentially what happened. Because, just because, we've been doing this all along. Well, that's great. So you've been, trying these people legally for all these years. That's still our fault for us not going through the right ways. Now, how it's potential they've been operating by, de facto, and they didn't know they were doing wrong. They didn't, but it was over time, though. Initially, somebody did. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just kind of gone through.
It's still their responsibility.
Yes, and it still sucks, right? So that being said, so now we get to a point to where we're trying to figure out, okay, so what does this mean for everybody, right? So instead of sitting down with the tribes, which the tribes and Stitt have already been on iffy ground because of him trying to hike up the percentage that they pay to the state. Okay, so it's already in turmoil. He's already put some bad blood out there. Now he's taking them back to court for this, instead of sitting down and saying, hey, so what does this mean for us? How can we come to an agreement? Okay, because you're not going to be able to carry these caseloads if it is retroactive. How are we going to do with this? How are we going to do with that? No, we're just like, I don't like the answer to this that the Supreme Court gave, so I'm just going to fight back instead of trying to work with the tribes to resolve the problem. And that's really what the big issue is not as much as him fighting it all together, but it's, okay, you could have worked with the tribes to come up with a solution that's beneficial to everybody, instead of just trying to completely, slap them in the face, in my opinion, and try to remove their sovereignty in those areas. So that's kind of where we got now. Now, they've already said that it's not going to be retroactive. Okay, they did bring that up. So the retroactive cases don't matter. And the federal government has already hired extra people and have gone through the process and gave extra funding to accommodate for the future influx of federal cases and stuff like that. So what I feel like it really comes down to now is, the oversight of things like, oil decisions and land decisions. That's a lot of the feedback I've been getting, is that's what it really comes down to, is because Stitt is very, very, very well backed by oil and gas and those entities, and this directly affects them. the oversight directly affects them, because now instead of the state possibly having oversight over certain areas, it could go to the tribes, which means it could change contracts, it could change all sorts of things. So when it comes down to it, it's more of a money issue than it is really a policy issue, in my opinion. So that's kind of my 5-minute high level overview of what it is, what it's kind of caused. And, you know, when it comes to your other question, which was how I would have handled it, is I would have taken all the information, I would have written down questions to bring to the Supreme Court, like we did with, hey, is this retroactive or not? How is this going to affect this? How is it, you know, and came up with those questions. But I would have sat down with the tribes and I would have said, okay, so how is this going to affect things moving forward? What kind of negotiations can we come up with? Because you don't have the capacity, you know, or some of the tribes don't, some of them do, you know, to handle these certain situations, and gone tribe by tribe and made agreements with those individual tribes. So that way moving forward, we could have a prosperous relationship.
Okay, I appreciate that. I am familiar with, at the beginning of the Stitt tribal relationship, he wanted to renegotiate. You say hike up. He wanted to renegotiate the contract.
Right.
And so that's where they were unable to kind of see eye to eye. And it's easy. And again, you have a better lay of the land than I do from that 5-minute repertoire. But I think we can both appreciate that during the proceedings, it's like a poker game. Each thing happens according to a series of events.
Right.
And we say and do things along the way. And it played out in a way that, you know, bent. So moving up a folder at a notch. So you and I agree that we want less government, minimum amount of government, and we would agree maybe probably that the federal government is bigger government than state government.
Right.
Is that okay?
That's absolutely true.
So now, isn't it counterproductive to remove the state from tribal negotiation, because all that's going to do is make it a federal state? It's all it's going to be is the feds aren't going to give sovereignty to the tribes, friends. They called me a savage 200 years ago, and they're not going to change that. Okay, so woo 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 woo. I had a guy ask me one time, "Are you a dotted Indian or a feathered Indian?" Woo 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 woo. So my point is, there's no such thing as tribal sovereignty, is what I would say. The feds will have their finger on it. And that means all they're going to do is federalize the tribes. So how do the tribes get a payoff? By being federalized. Right. Or do you disagree with my assessment?
So I should say I agree slightly. So the thing is yes, you are correct. Federal government is, you know, the ultimate negative, right?
They rule around here, right?
But there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, okay? So when it comes to the tribes and the arrangements that were made, those were made from the get-go between the tribes and the federal government, right? So there's things that we can do moving forward to help remove that, but in a proper way. So ideas that had been brought to me, and I have not vetted all of these, I will preface up front to see if it is actually logical to actually happening. These are all things that I'm working through with my team, right?
Right. We're having a discussion. This isn't like we're not making policy. I'm adversarial by nature, and it's hard to put up with me, and you're doing a great job. And so this is easy. We're not holding you to anything. We're just having a discussion.
I just always like to preface that though, because
you're running for office, and that's understandable.
That being said, some ideas that had been brought up is, whenever you are a leader, or if you are a good leader, you have to be able to manage out, manage up, and manage down, right? Okay. So there, you know, are ways the tribes can also decide on their own if they feel like it is in their best interest to stay sovereign or to join the state, okay? They can relinquish and dissolve their tribe if they want to, okay? So hypothetically speaking, what if we were able to come to the tribes and come up with agreements where it's in their best interest to dissolve their reservations and join the state? That is a very real possibility. There's lots of things like that that are coming together with people and coming up with solutions that can still get us to that goal. without bringing in, fighting it in federal court. You know what I mean? Because if the tribes feel like it is in their best interest to do that, why wouldn't they? You know what I mean? So there are other ideas like that people have brought up to me. Like I said, I have not fully vetted them to see if they would completely be logical. But there are things out there that we can do outside of just saying we should dissolve federally from a federal level. We should get the federal government involved to say there's no more reservations because we're never really equal until that happens, yada, 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 when it comes down to like, well, these were pacts that were made, forever ago that are there. And so if we want to dissolve them, there has to be logic and reason behind it. And it has to be done in the right way. So,
we're listening to the analysis of Natalie Bruno running for governor of the state of Oklahoma. The date for election is next year, November 8th of 2022. Plenty of time for the electorate, but not much time for the candidate. So I appreciate your efforts to try to bring me your attitude about the McGirt decision. I'm a little cagey. I think that the effort to protect tribal sovereignty brings us more federal regulations. It's right to Oklahoma. I mean, right home, because 2/3 of Oklahoma is not going to be under federal control. Everybody's going to pretend, the tribes got the Chuck Hoskins Jr. is real tough, and he's out there removing our mascots that I love, okay, honoring the people of my nation with mascots, but he wants to remove them because he's a sheep lining up behind the feds. So that's my rant on him. We got about 15 minutes left. You have been just gracious. Wonderful. Thank you. The only thing harder than putting up with me is being me. So, okay. So here, as I read through your statements on your website. Oh, tell them where to find you too. How do they donate? How do they find you? Where do they contact you?
Yes. So my website is electnataliebruno.com. All of my social media handles are on there, so you can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Clubhouse. You can also donate. There's a big donate button, or even follow my campaign. There's multiple places where you can sign up for newsletters, find out more information. I am not a candidate that won't answer questions. I run into that myself just in the last month or two, trying to ask candidates questions. They won't give opinions on stuff if they feel like it doesn't strongly benefit them. I don't operate that way. Even if I don't think it's an answer you'll like, I'm still going to give an honest answer. So please reach out. I have no problem responding to anything.
Excellent. Natalie Bruno, find her everywhere. She just said, so here was what I found that I thought was an incongruency. I'll give you the chance to teach me. In the abortion portion of the show, you said the government has no place in healthcare choices, period.
Yes.
Okay. Later in healthcare, you said we need laws to make healthcare prices transparent. Now, is that an incongruency?
And yeah, I never stated that. I never state we need laws to make healthcare more transparent. I said that we are able to have more transparency through LASIK and stuff. I can go on there at any point and see the pricing, but I never said that there should be laws making that mandatory.
Okay, well, and I don't want to be, literally, I'm literally reading from you, so you want to correct that on your website.
Okay, I have volunteers that type stuff too.
That's fine. So again, I'm not trying to be mean.
To make it
I understand. So that makes sense because you don't seem to be illogical to me, and that. So you would agree that's an illogical
if
concept.
That's on there, then that's a typo, and that should not be on there.
Under healthcare, it says on your website, quote, we need laws to make healthcare prices transparent in Oklahoma.
Yeah, no, that was not my wording, so I will have that.
So I appreciate you correcting that.
I appreciate you bringing that to my attention.
I mean, I'm trying to keep up with you. That's how this is.
Yeah, as you can see, I'm really busy, so I don't have time to double check.
Listen, no, your momentum is incredible.
Thank you.
You're a year ahead of it, and you've already got a swing going. Mm-hmm. And so I have bigger issues with what I see as incongruency with the national platform of the Libertarians, which, I don't know if you want to touch that. Not what I think, but it's one thing to run as I've argued with Chris Powell and the rest of them It's easy to be a libertarian within a state organization. When you be governor, now you're the libertarian national platform matters. And the libertarian national platform is horrendous, in my opinion. But again, I've not found a libertarian that ties themselves down to any platform. Do you?
Well, I think that people expect the libertarians to be, line item per line item, the same as the national platform. But we don't hold Republicans and Democrats to that same definition or ideology. If you'll meet people, or I meet people all the time that's like, well, I'm a Republican, but I agree with blah, 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 blah. And the same thing on the Democratic side. So I don't feel like why we should be held to any other standard. I'm a libertarian. I don't agree with every single line item on the libertarian platform. Some stuff varies more right or more left.
So there's a lot of stars in this. There's a lot of stars in the sky, and the platform is the sextant. And so, yeah, you don't always agree, but isn't the platform how we know which way you're headed? So it's not like we don't just not hold you to a platform.
No, of course.
We see how you deviate.
Right, and that's where we bring up situations where we say, yes, I'm a libertarian. I don't agree with line item 1, section D, but everything else I'm pretty, on par for. And so a lot of stuff too, it's one of those things where it's like, I agree to an extent, but I would do it differently, or I would do it this way. But again, that's the same thing with Republicans or Democrats. We run into situations where there's going to be a line item or two that differ slightly.
Right. And people kept saying, oh, Trump, he's no Republican. Well, hell no, he's a populist. Mm-hmm. This is what he was. He's a populist. It just so happens that what he was saying was popular at the time. So we've got about 10 minutes left. Tell us one more time where to get a hold of you, and I want to make sure that you get anything else in tonight that you want to talk about, and we can have you. It's a year. We'll have you back again for an update. But, I mean, tell us, I think you and I probably agree mostly on most stuff. We probably disagree on, like you said, on different things.
And that's okay.
So the fact that you're in the fight is impressive, and I love our American system for that. I think one of the problems we have in America is some of the people on the far left, progressives, they want to tax the rich, not knowing that we in America are the rich. Everybody in America is considered rich by the rest of the world. So if you want to tax the rich, trust me, friends, they're talking about feeding you to the rest of the world.
But on that too.
Yes, please.
So there was a couple things that we had looked up recently. So the United States is one of the lowest taxed countries, right? But we are number one in philanthropy and giving across the nation. And we have been able to draw a direct correlation to the fact that because we tax less, it enables people to give more. Jeff Bezos was given a whole lot of crap about his going off into space while we're in the middle of a pandemic and people are having all these financial issues, and they're talking about, taxing him more and taxing his companies more. And he was the number one giver in monetary donations as an individual and as a business last year. He gave, I think it was $152 million personally to COVID situation, to multiple nonprofits.
Right.
When you tax people more and they have less, or businesses more, they don't still give the same amount of money because they still need to be able to pay for things. That means they give less. And anybody that knows anything knows that nonprofits are more impactful than government subsidies ever will be.
Wow, I'm going to have you back on because I have a bent with nonprofits until we're out of debt. I don't think we should allow nonprofits. The other thing, I'll have you back. You can nonprofits, they undermine our economic sovereignty by draining out the value of the dollar. Nonprofits were a thing that were invented when we had no debt to China and when we had what you call surplus money. Nonprofits aren't paying their fair share is what's going on there. But that's just, you're so kind. So tell them again where to find you.
Yes, electNatalieBruno.com. You can go on there, view my issues. You can see any of my previous interviews and podcasts. I house them under interviews. So I will stick this one there as well.
Thank you.
And so it's a great way to, instead of just reading a blurb about an issue, it allows you to actually hear some conversation about it.
Right, and it gives the viewer, especially with a show like mine, it gives the viewer the ability to see how you handle a caustic fella like me. Like, she handled that guy, no problem. So okay, so I think that when we talk about the abortion issue, one of the things you get into to fix it is higher quality sex education. Is how from a, you think as a governor, how are you gonna dispense higher quality sex education to my 13-year-old as a governor?
So here's what it comes down to. It's not my responsibility to teach your children higher quality sexual education, right?
Right.
That's your individual household's responsibility. It's holding.
But why, as governor, is that a thing for you?
Why is it a thing for me to?
What I'm saying is, you want small, because if you want, I'm a contrarian. If you want smaller government, and you're running for governor, why are you saying how are you gonna add to government?
Mm-hmm. So what I said in my platform is that higher quality sexual education, when you say you need something, right? So if I say that children need to have healthier meals, that doesn't mean that I'm going to send a cook to your house cooking meals, or I'm going to go shopping with you and force you to cook. It's all about education for the parents just as much as it is for the children. I believe that sexual education or sexual conversations need to happen in the home. Okay, so whether that's providing parents through, I know you just said that you don't like nonprofits. I disagree with you, and we can do that on another show.
Yeah, let's do that.
Providing, information to parents so that they feel more comfortable having talks with their children. We're in a very red state. I have, I'm in my late 30s. I have multiple friends of mine that remembered and tell stories growing up where you don't talk about sex at all. It was a non-issue. You didn't bring it up. And so of course things are going to happen, right? I don't operate that way with my children, there's a change that needs to happen where we can have those conversations, and abstinence and teaching abstinence, as much as, I would love for my children to wait until marriage. That's not realistic, especially in nowadays culture. So helping to provide them with the tools, but that's not necessarily me imposing through law that a school teaches it or that a government entity teaches it. It's right. Helping provide parents with knowledge to share to their children.
Natalie, you've been very kind to spend your time with me. I had one viewer that asked me specifically, what are your views on, because I know you, on the death penalty. Tell us the death penalty views.
Yes, so high level, I am against the death penalty. Not because I don't think that there are some heinous crimes that people deserve to die for. I always use the example, if I ever caught anybody physically harming my children, we probably wouldn't have to go to trial, right?
Here comes the death penalty.
Because I would handle it myself.
That's exactly how this works, yeah.
Right, but this problem is we have proven time and time again that through, planted evidence, like these aren't fairy tales of things that have happened. We have planted evidence, we have, wrong witness, testimony. We've had racism. We've had lots of things that have happened that have made it to where we still in our state have over 7% of the death penalty convictions that we've had that have come back as the people being innocent, right? So when we think about, the horrible rapists and child molesters and all these people, they need to hang from a tree, right? But those aren't the people that get the death penalty. The people who have that much evidence against them, what happens is they get plea deals. They say, hey, you're obviously, the one that did it. There's nothing against you. How about if you save taxpayers money, plead guilty, and we'll take the death penalty off the table. That's what happens. And of course, since they know that they're dead in the water, they agree to it. So we have this fantasized idea that these are the people on death row, and they're not. And there's huge disparities on people who have gotten the death penalty, which I can kind of say, yeah, that kind of, I could see the death penalty being given in that situation. In other situations, when you're like, how did they come up with that being the death penalty? And so until we get to a point where we know that everybody on death row is innocent, I think that sticking people with life without parole, if it saves one innocent person, I think it's worth it.
Right. I don't know if you're a church going person, but so if
New Testament Christian, not a.
and I didn't mean to probe, but my line was always, if Jesus Christ was running the guillotine, I'd like roll the guillotine, because then you got a guy who knows who's who, and you can dispense justice equally and fairly. But the fact is, any capital punishment provided by the state after the fact is a vengeance. It's an act of vengeance. So let me ask you this to balance it out. I know it's late. I'm keeping you long. So my attitude, you're listening, thankfully, to Natalie Bruno, running for gubernatorial candidate here in Oklahoma, 1 year to the month coming up. Check her out at her website. Tell us again where it is.
electNatalieBruno.com.
There it is. So on the way out, to me, capital punishment happens at the time. If I fear for my life, I exact capital punishment. And I see how that's rational.
Yes.
Doing it later, we don't know all the who's fair. Natalie, you've been a great guest. You put up with me really well, and I want to have you back again, especially because I got a rise out of you on the nonprofits. So good luck on getting that freedom message out there. And I agree with you on all that stuff, but let's have you back again in the couple of months and update where you're going on your campaign. And thanks once again for enjoying the go back and forth.
All right. Thank you so much, Tom, for having me on.
Thanks, Natalie.
Bye.
Well, there she is, Natalie Bruno, putting up with me, Tommy McKay, on a Monday night. I threw some stuff back and forth at her. She's very pleasant, very knowledgeable of the situation. And it's interesting to me that it seems like some of her cohorts were born in a time when parents are not allowing their children to talk about sex. An old guy like me coming up in the 60s, I'm like, what happened? What happened? It was the sexual revolution. 15 years later, the parents don't know what they're doing. Tommy McKay here on 3D Politics. Catch me at verbalviking.com to find out all the info, and send me a message at verbalviking@gmail.com. We'll see you guys next week.